Have you ever noticed how two women can go through the exact same divorce, yet their lives unfold in completely different ways? One feels like she's disappearing beneath the weight of heartbreak, while the other, somehow, becomes stronger than anyone ever expected. At first glance, it almost seems unfair. But if you look beneath the surface, relationship psychology reveals something fascinating. Divorce doesn't magically make someone stronger. It removes the environment that was keeping parts of them hidden. And for many women, that painful ending becomes the first real opportunity to reconnect with themselves in years. If you're watching this while trying to make sense of your own relationship, or you're wondering why some women seem to completely transform after divorce, this video might change the way you see healing. Because the answer isn't about revenge, luck, or suddenly becoming fearless. It's all so, and it didn't have to brand. It is about understanding what happens inside the mind when a long-term attachment bond breaks, and how that painful disruption can sometimes become the beginning of extraordinary personal growth. Attachment theory helps explain why divorce affects people so differently. As human beings, we're wired to form emotional bonds with the people we love. These bonds create feelings of safety, belonging, and stability. Over time, our closest relationships become part of how our brain predicts the world. We don't just love our partners. We organize parts of our identity around them. So when a marriage ends, it isn't simply the loss of another person. It's the loss of a future that once felt certain, a daily routine that became familiar, and a version of yourself that existed within that relationship. That's why divorce often feels so disorienting. Many women describe waking up one morning and realizing they don't even know who they are anymore. It isn't because they've become weak. It's because the emotional map they've relied on for years has suddenly disappeared. What's interesting is that psychologists have found people don't and or all respond to this disruption in the same way. Our attachment styles influence how we experience loss, healing, and eventually growth. A woman with an anxious attachment style may initially feel overwhelmed by fear, loneliness, and self-doubt. She might replay every conversation, wondering what she could have done differently. She may struggle with the silence after years of constant emotional focus on the relationship. At first, it can feel unbearable. A woman with a more avoidant attachment style may seem calm on the outside. She might throw herself into work, stay constantly busy, or convince herself she's completely fine. But emotional pain doesn't disappear simply because it's pushed aside. Often, those emotions surface later, sometimes months after everyone assumes she's already moved on. And women with a relatively secure attachment style usually experience grief deeply too. Secure attachment doesn't eliminate pain. It simply allows someone to move through it without believing the pain defines who they are forever. Here's where things become incredibly important. Attachment styles aren't permanent identities. They're patterns. And patterns can change through awareness, healthy relationships, and intentional healing. That's one of the biggest misconceptions about attachment theory. People often think they're stuck with whatever style they developed in childhood. Research suggests otherwise. Our attachment system remains flexible throughout life, especially during major life transitions. Ironically, divorce can become one of those transitions. Think about a woman who spent 15 years constantly adjusting herself to avoid conflict. Maybe she stopped sharing opinions because they always led to arguments. Maybe she gradually gave up hobbies she once loved because there was never enough time or emotional energy. Maybe she became so focused on keeping the relationship functioning that she slowly stopped asking herself a simple question. What do I actually want? At first, those compromises may have felt small. Missing a weekend with friends, saying yes when she wanted to say no, putting everyone else's needs first. Over years, those small choices quietly reshape someone's identity, not because they're incapable of independence, but because close relationships naturally influence how we see ourselves. Psychologists sometimes describe identity as something that continuously built through our experiences and relationships. Healthy relationships support that identity. Unhealthy dynamics can slowly narrow it. That's why the end of a marriage can create such an unexpected experience. Once the constant emotional demands disappear, many women suddenly have space they've never had before. At first, that space feels terrifying. Silence replaces constant conversations. Empty evenings replace familiar routines. There are no texts to answer, no emotional tension to manage, no walking on eggshells, just quiet. For someone who's been emotionally overwhelmed for years, that quiet can initially feel uncomfortable because the nervous system has become accustomed to constant stress. It's like stepping off a moving treadmill. Even after you've stopped, your body still expects movement. But eventually something remarkable can happen. That same quiet becomes freedom. Instead of asking, how do I keep this relationship together? The question slowly becomes, who am I becoming now? That shift changes everything. Some women return to school after decades away from education. Others finally pursue careers they once believed were impossible. Some reconnect with old friendships they slowly lost during marriage. Others begin therapy for the first time, not because they're broken, but because they're curious about understanding themselves more deeply. From the outside, people often describe these women as becoming unstoppable. But what they're actually witnessing isn't someone transforming into a completely different person. They're watching someone gradually remove years of emotional survival strategies and a thing you reconnect with strengths that were always there beneath the surface. And here's something that often surprises people. This transformation rarely happens overnight. Social media loves dramatic before and after stories. Real healing is much quieter. It looks like crying in your car one day and laughing with friends the next. It looks like doubting yourself on Monday and speaking up for yourself on Friday. It looks like making one healthy decision, then another, even when confidence hasn't fully returned yet. Growth isn't the absence of pain. Growth is learning that pain doesn't have to make every decision for you anymore. That's why some women appear almost unrecognizable a few years after divorce. The confidence people notice isn't built because life suddenly became easy. It's built because they repeatedly faced situations they once believed they couldn't survive and discovered they were stronger than they imagined. The woman who once feared being alone learns she can create peace in her own home. The woman who constantly sought validation begins trusting her own judgment. The woman who believed her worth depended on keeping everyone happy slowly realizes that healthy love doesn't require abandoning yourself. And once those beliefs begin to change, the way she approaches every future relationship starts changing too. That doesn't mean every woman who gets divorced automatically reaches this point. In fact, one of the biggest myths about personal growth is the idea that pain itself changes people. Pain can certainly become a catalyst for change, but it can also leave someone feeling stuck if they never have the opportunity, support, or willingness to process what happened. The difference isn't simply the divorce. It's what happens after the divorce. This is where psychology introduces an idea that's both comforting and empowering. Our brains are constantly adapting to new experiences. Researchers call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new pathways over time. While heartbreak activates many of the same brain regions associated with physical pain, those intense emotional responses don't stay at the same level forever. As people build new routines, experience supportive relationships, and challenge old beliefs, the brain gradually updates its expectations about safety, connection, and identity. That's why the first few months after a divorce can feel completely different from life 3 years later. In the beginning, almost everything becomes a reminder of what was lost. Driving past a favorite restaurant, hearing a familiar song, even walking through the grocery store can trigger memories that seem to appear out of nowhere. The attachment system is doing exactly what it evolved to do. It's searching for the person who once represented emotional security. Many women mistakenly believe these emotional waves mean they're moving backward. They're not. Healing isn't a straight line. It's much more like learning to live beside an ocean. Some days the waves are gentle. Other days they feel overwhelming. But over time, something important changes. The waves usually become less frequent, and when they do arrive, they no longer have the same power to pull you under. This is especially true when someone begins recognizing the patterns that shaped the relationship in the first place. Imagine a woman who spent years believing that love meant constantly proving her value. She apologized for things that weren't her fault. She ignored her own exhaustion because everyone else's needs came first. She believed that if she just loved harder, communicated better, or sacrificed a little more, everything would eventually improve. From an attachment perspective, this often reflects an anxious strategy. The goal isn't manipulation. The goal is preserving connection at almost any cost. The problem is that when your self-worth becomes tied to keeping another person close, you slowly lose sight of your own emotional needs. After divorce, many women begin asking questions they never allowed themselves to ask before. Why was I so afraid of disappointing people? Why did I ignore my intuition so many times? Why did I believe asking for respect was asking for too much? But those questions aren't signs of bitterness. They're signs of growing self-awareness. And self-awareness is one of the strongest predictors of lasting personal growth because it transforms painful experiences into meaningful lessons instead of lifelong wounds. For women with more avoidant tendencies, the journey often looks different. Instead of fearing abandonment, they may have learned to protect themselves by minimizing vulnerability. They became highly independent, rarely asked for help, and convinced themselves they didn't need anyone. After divorce, that emotional distance can initially feel like strength. I don't care. I'm fine. I've already moved on. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes those statements become protective walls that prevent genuine healing. Real resilience isn't the absence of emotion. It's having the courage to experience difficult emotions without letting them define your identity. One of the most powerful moments in recovery happens when someone realizes they can be both independent and emotionally connected. They don't have to choose one or the other. This realization often changes every relationship that follows, not just romantic relationships, but friendships, family connections, and even professional interactions. Another reason some women seem unstoppable after divorce has nothing to do with confidence at first. It has everything to do with clarity. When you've spent years living inside a difficult relationship, your emotional energy becomes scattered. You're constantly trying to predict someone's moods, avoid conflict, repair misunderstandings, or manage disappointment. That's mentally exhausting. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as emotional labor. It's the invisible work of managing feelings, expectations, and relationship dynamics every single day. When that constant emotional workload finally ends, many women discover they have energy they didn't even realize they were missing. Suddenly, they're reading books again. They're sleeping better. They're exercising because it feels good instead of trying to earn approval. They're laughing more. They're making decisions without wondering whether someone else will criticize them. To people on the outside, it looks like confidence appeared overnight. In reality, that energy was always there. It had simply been consumed by survival. There's another psychological shift that's easy to overlook. During marriage, many people naturally think in terms of we. We should move. We should save money. We should visit family. We should make this work. After divorce, that language gradually becomes I. At first, saying I can feel uncomfortable, even selfish. But healthy individuality isn't selfish. It's necessary. Strong relationships aren't built from two people losing themselves. They're built from two individuals choosing to share their lives while maintaining a clear sense of who they are. Many women don't fully experience that distinction until after a marriage ends. And once they do, something remarkable begins happening. They stop making decisions based entirely on fear. Instead of asking, what if people don't approve? They begin asking, does this align with the life I want to build? Instead of chasing validation, they begin creating values. Instead of measuring success by whether everyone is happy with them, they begin measuring success by whether they're living honestly. That's a profound psychological shift. It's also why confidence after divorce often feels different from confidence before marriage. Before, confidence may have depended on achievements, appearance, or other people's approval. Now, it's rooted in something much deeper. The knowledge that you've survived one of life's most painful transitions and discovered that your identity is bigger than the relationship that ended. Once someone truly understands that, they stop seeing divorce as the final chapter of their story. They begin seeing it as the moment they finally started writing the next one with their own, their voice. Of course, none of this means the journey is easy. There are still birthdays that feel different, anniversaries that quietly pass by, and moments when an unexpected memory can bring tears to your eyes. Healing doesn't erase the past. It changes your relationship with it. Over time, the memories that once felt unbearable begin to feel like chapters in a much larger story rather than the entire story itself. One of the most inspiring things psychologists have observed is that many people report experiencing what researchers call post-traumatic growth after major life crises. This doesn't mean trauma or heartbreak is somehow good. No one needs to experience deep pain in order to become a stronger person. Instead, post-traumatic growth describes the positive psychological changes that can sometimes emerge after someone has worked through an incredibly difficult experience. For many women, those changes aren't loud or dramatic. They're deeply personal. A woman who once struggled to say no begins setting healthy boundaries without apologizing. A woman who constantly questioned her instincts starts trusting herself again. A woman who believed she had to earn love realizes that healthy love isn't this. It's something you perform for. It's something you experience while remaining fully yourself. These changes don't happen because someone else finally validated her. They happen because she slowly became someone she could rely on. That's one of the greatest gifts of healing. You stop seeing yourself through someone else's opinion. You begin seeing yourself through your own experience. And that changes everything. It changes the people you allow into your life. It changes the conversations you're willing to have. It changes the standards you refuse to lower. Most importantly, it changes the relationship you have with yourself. There's another reason some women appear so unstoppable after divorce, and it's something people rarely talk about. They stop trying to become the person everyone else expects. During difficult relationships, it's common for people to wear emotional masks. One mask for keeping the peace, another for protecting the children, another for family gatherings, another for friends who ask if everything is okay. Keeping those masks in place requires enormous emotional energy. Eventually, Many women become exhausted from pretending. After divorce, although there may be grief, uncertainty, and fear, there's also an opportunity to live more authentically. For the first time in years, they can ask simple but powerful questions. What kind of home feels peaceful to me? What friendships actually make me feel supported? What dreams did I put on hold? What values do I want to guide the next chapter of my life? These aren't just lifestyle questions. They're identity questions. And identity is at the heart of long-term emotional well-being. Psychologists consistently find that people who have a clear sense of their values are often better equipped to navigate stress, make difficult decisions, and recover from setbacks. That's because values provide direction even when emotions feel overwhelming. Imagine driving through thick fog. You can't always see the destination, but if you know which road you're supposed to stay on, you can keep moving forward. Values work the same way. They don't eliminate uncertainty. They help you move through it. That's why the women who seem the most resilient after divorce aren't necessarily the ones who never struggled. They're often the ones who stopped running from their emotions and started learning from them. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" they gradually begin asking, "What is this experience teaching me about the kind of life I want to create?" That single shift can transform pain into purpose, not overnight, not perfectly, but one decision at a time. And perhaps the most surprising transformation happens when love enters the picture again. Many people assume becoming unstoppable means never needing another relationship. But attachment theory tells us something much healthier than that. Human beings are designed for connection. The goal isn't emotional isolation. The goal is secure connection. A woman who has done the work of understanding her attachment patterns often enters future relationships differently. She communicates her needs instead of hiding them. She notices red flags instead of explaining them away. She values consistency over intensity. She understands that butterflies can sometimes be anxiety, while genuine safety may initially feel unfamiliar simply because it's calm. Most importantly, she no longer believes she has to abandon herself to keep someone else from leaving. That's what real confidence looks like. It's quiet. It's steady. It isn't about proving anything. It isn't about making an ex regret their decision. It isn't about winning some invisible competition. It's about waking up each morning knowing that your happiness no longer depends on becoming smaller so someone else can feel bigger. If you're watching this while you're still in the middle of heartbreak, it's completely okay if you don't feel unstoppable today. You don't have to. Healing isn't measured by how quickly you move on. It's measured by how honestly you're willing to meet yourself where you are. Some days, progress will simply mean getting out of bed. Other days, it will mean having a difficult conversation, trying something new, or finally believing that your future deserves as much care as your past received. Every one of those moments matters, because becoming stronger rarely happens through one life-changing decision. It happens through hundreds of small choices that quietly reshape the way you see yourself. The choice to speak kindly to yourself instead of criticizing yourself. The choice to ask for help instead of carrying everything alone. The choice to set a boundary without feeling guilty. The choice to believe that your story didn't end when your marriage did. Those choices may seem small today, but over months and years, they become the foundation of an entirely new life. So maybe the reason some women become unstoppable after divorce isn't because divorce gave them extraordinary strength. Maybe it's because after losing a relationship that once defined them, they finally discovered the strength that had been there all along, waiting beneath fear, self-doubt, and years of putting themselves last. And perhaps that's the most hopeful message of all. Your hardest chapter doesn't have to become your final chapter. It can become the chapter that teaches you who you really are. If this video helped you understand yourself or someone you love a little better, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear what insight resonated with you the most. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more evidence-based insights into attachment theory and healthy relationships, and share this with someone who might need a little hope today. And if you're ready to keep exploring the psychology of healing, emotional security, and lasting love, click on the next video on your screen. It might be exactly the next step your journey needs.